Last week, we went 2 for 5 in best bets. We only went 8 for 5 in the money line. We are looking to bounce back here, and week 15 has major playoff implications across the entire NFL. Last week, you guys know I took 4 underdogs. Generally, I took favorites, though when we got into divisional play, I felt like I was inclined to take underdogs. This week, I'm not taking any dogs. I'm going all favorites. And so, without further ado, you may think I'm nuts, but let's get into it. Thursday night football. This is one of those games where I like the road team. I like the Rams going into Santa Clara and for the first time in forever, sweeping the San Francisco 49ers. Listen, could the Niners win out and win the NFC West? Yes, they could. I thought what they did last week to the Chicago Bears was just poor bad timing. The Niners were coming off 2 horrific losses to Green Bay and Buffalo back to back. Chicago had just fired their coach. I don't believe that San Francisco is talented enough this year to make a run. Now they are getting revenge back from week 3 when they gave that game up to the Rams, but at that point, Brandon Ayuk was in for the Niners, and Puka Nakua and Cooper Kupp did not play for the Rams. I think that's a big factor in this game. I think Matthew Stafford and that Rams offense, along with Kyron Williams and those 2 receivers, they are heating up. I think Jared Verse gets after San Francisco, whose offensive line has not been great this year, and you could make a case for Verse being the defensive rookie of the year. I think Sean McVay, again for the first time in forever, gets the best of Kyle Shanahan. I think he ends the Niners' playoff hopes here at home. Rams go on the road. They keep their own playoff hopes alive, not only for the NFC West, but a very slim chance, in my opinion, at a wild card. These are 2 heated divisional rivals. So I don't feel comfortable about it. San Francisco has owned the Rams in the past. We know Shanahan's record against Sean McVay. So I don't feel enough confidence in it to bet the game. But I do like the Rams here in an upset Thursday night at San Francisco. Next game. What does it say about the Kansas City Chiefs? So, of course, now that Taylor Swift is coming off her Eras tour in Vancouver, she may be in Cleveland, Ohio. Out of all places, a very snowy Cleveland, Ohio today for this matchup between the Chiefs and the Browns. But what does this say about Kansas City when the Browns, who are a 3-win football team, and I know that they are on the road, but let me tell you this. Baltimore on the road is favored by 14 and a half against the New York Giants. Kansas City on the road is only favored by 4.5 at Cleveland. Do we really think that the Browns are 10 points better than the than the New York Giants? I don't think so. If it was, a touchdown or more here, I would take the Browns plus the points because again, Kansas City, even against Vegas, against the Chargers, against whoever, not in the New Orleans Saints this year, they cannot seem to blow anybody out. Jameis Winston has a hot game, then he has a cold game, then he has a hot game. He had a little bit of a cold game against Pittsburgh last week. I think Jameis heats up here. Again, I do think that Kevin Stefanski, and I don't know how to feel about him yet as the Browns head coach, whether he comes back next year or not. I have a huge conversation with Andy Z, Cleveland sports fan, friend of the show, on Friday where we talk about this. Um, I think the Browns will play well. I think it's a close game. I think Kansas City ends up squeaking it out. I would not be surprised if with the hook the Browns do cover the spread. Okay. I told you last week in a game between Mac Jones and Will Levis, I didn't care if it was Mac Jones or Will Levis. I was taking Mac Jones to win the game. This is the most significant potential quarterback mismatch of the weekend, besides the next game that we'll cover. I like Cincinnati minus 4.5 against their former offensive coordinator, Brian Callahan, who, yes, will know Joe Burrow. Yes, he will know Jamar Chase. Yes, he will know T. Higgins. Yes, he will know Zach Taylor. I think even a Bengals defense will make Will Levis look like a deer in headlights. I mean, if Will Levis cannot do anything against this horrific Bengals defense, which in my opinion is probably the worst defense in football, if you're Tennessee, I disagree with Sam from Survivor. I don't think Will Levis is a franchise quarterback. Shout out to Sam, by the way. This is being recorded, by the way, prior to part one of the season finale of Survivor season 40, several. But I do like Cincinnati here, minus 4.5. They beat the Cowboys last week and they did cover because of that crazy blocked punt that the ball moved forward. The Dallas player touched it. Cincinnati picked it up. I don't care that Tennessee has luxurious sneak in the secondary. I think the Bengals offense is just way too horrific. I don't think Tennessee is going to be able to put up enough points to stay with Cincinnati. Okay, in betting, when you have a spread over 10 and a mismatch like this, like it was with the Lions in Jacksonville a couple weeks ago, sometimes you just close your eyes and you pray and you take the number. I think Baltimore coming off a bye, and this is another aspect I should mention of my best bets this week, is I do think teams coming off a bye, it's a later week. The last week of buys was last week. I think those teams coming off a bye are more fresh. I give them an advantage this week. Um, I think Baltimore coming off a bye, losing to Philadelphia in the fashion that they did. I think they will be angry. We know Lamar Jackson's record against the NFC. Actually, one of those losses came against the Giants and Daniel Jones, but that was 2 years ago. I think Baltimore stomps the Giants. Closing my eyes, I'm taking them minus 14 and a half. Next game, Commanders at the Saints. Marshawn Lattimore, I believe, will be making his Commanders debut against his former team here. Commanders are coming off a bye. They're a touchdown favorite. Here's the weird thing about New Orleans. They have only lost one game with Darren Rizzi as their interim head coach. Now, say what you want, they beat Atlanta, who has been collapsing. They did beat Cleveland, who's not a very good football team, obviously, and they did beat the Giants, who are not a very good football team, obviously. But he clearly has his guys playing for him in New Orleans. Their only loss was against the Rams, and they held the Rams, shut out in the first half. It was a 6-0 game. So Darren Rizzi has those guys playing. But again, I think Cliff Kingsbury, Jaden Daniels, Dan Quinn, Commanders coming off a bye. They're looking to solidify the number 7 seed in the NFC playoff picture. I like Washington to win. It could be a blowout. I don't know. The Saints offense has struggled without Taysom Hill this year, ironically, who was also done for the year. But I think there's better games on the board here. I'm not going to touch this game. This feels like one of those weird corner TV games that's barely going to get any views outside of fans in Washington and New Orleans. I know you're going to think I'm nuts. Listen, the way Bryce Young has played during the last month, Bryce Young has significantly outplayed Cooper Rush. I think Dallas and CeeDee Lamb, now that they lost that game to Cincinnati, their playoff hopes are basically over. I think Dallas should consider shutting down CeeDee Lamb for the year. And I think the way that Carolina has played, they are gaining momentum. The last 3 weeks, they arguably should have beat all three of Kansas City, Tampa Bay, and Philadelphia. They just could not pull through at the end. This is the first time in over 2 years, 33 games, the Carolina Panthers are favored in a football game. To me, that says more about the Cowboys than it does about the Panthers. I like Carolina here, minus 2.5. I also like Houston. Yeah, I'm taking 4 bets in the 1 o'clock window. I like Houston, again, coming off a bye. I think this is where the Dolphins season ends. Yes, it was a division game last week, but the Dolphins needed Garrett Wilson to stupidly go out of bounds to have enough time to force a field goal to get to overtime. Miami's a very weird team. They beat up on bad teams. They don't play well against good teams. Yes, it's in a dome in Houston. Yes, there's that fast track for Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle to run around. But again, Houston, I have a feeling they're going to figure some stuff out in the passing game over the bye week. Miami's secondary and their defense in general, which is not very good. I suspect a big Nico Collins, Joe Mixon game here, and I think CJ Stroud and the Houston Texans look to walk up that AFC South division with a Colts loss to Denver, which I'm also projecting, by the way, and a Houston win here against Miami. I like the Texans minus 2.5. Let me just say this. The Jets are a disaster. Aaron Rodgers starts off great in the first half. He does not do good in the second half. I don't care how bad Mac Jones and the Jaguars offense is. I'm not picking the Jets to win a football game. The Jets should certainly not be favored. Though again, saying that, this is the one week where a bad New York Jets team sort of gets one more win on the year and beat Jacksonville. But I don't believe that to happen. I got the Jags. Honestly, this is a game that, again, fan base in New York and Jacksonville will watch. Nobody else will watch. This is disaster waiting all over it. Bucks at Chargers. This is a fascinating game to kick off one of five. Yes, one of five games in the 4 o'clock window. Bucks at the Chargers. You have Baker Mayfield and the Red Hot Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who have now taken control of that NFC South division. But you have a Chargers team and Jim Harbaugh, who, even without J.K. Dobbins, we know their philosophy. They're going to run the football. It's yet to be determined if when McConkey is going to play, which I think will be a big factor in this game. But I think Todd Bowles and his blitzing scheme is a bad matchup for a Charger team with a very smart quarterback in Justin Herbert, who runs a lot of play action, who will get the ball out of his hands quickly, and the Chargers defense has been top five in points allowed all year long. I think this is a very physical defensive-ish battle. 2017, somewhere around there. I think the spread is about right. I think Herbert will make one more play than Baker Mayfield. I like the Chargers in this game. Speaking of which, in the AFC West, I already alluded to it. I like Denver here. Anthony Richardson, this is the one game where even off a bye, where Denver is also off a bye here. Denver in that altitude at home. You got Sean Payton with Bo Nix coming off a bye. You got Denver, who if they win, Miami loses. Cincinnati would essentially have to win out to have any shot then at the AFC playoff picture, along with Denver losing out, which is still a potential scenario. If Kansas City were to slip up somewhere along the lines, that week 18 game against Denver for Kansas City would matter. Denver has the Chargers, and they have to go to LA, they have to go to Cincinnati, and then they have to go at home against Kansas City to finish the year. So for the Bengals, they have to win out. Denver can win one more game and essentially lose out. I think Denver gets Indianapolis here. And the Broncos defense, who leads the league in sacks, they get pressure up to the quarterback. I think Anthony Richardson really struggles here. I like Denver minus 3.5. New England at Arizona. This is a weird one because New England's coming off a bye. They're playing better. I'm interested to see what tricks OC AVP has up his sleeve for Drake May. And Arizona, all of a sudden, after being 6-3, are on a little bit of a skid. Two of those losses are to Seattle as well, and then the heartbreaker against Minnesota in Minnesota. Arizona seems to always be that team that plays great one week, bad one week, great one week, bad one week. They played bad against Seattle, so I think they bounced back against New England. The way New England's been playing as of late, even though they have not been winning games, the way Arizona has been playing as of late does not give me confidence in Arizona to cover, but I do like them in the money line. Okay, now we have three straight major implications for the playoff picture. Obviously, Buffalo, Detroit. What needs to be said? Potential Super Bowl preview here. Josh Allen, Jared Goff, James Cook, Jameer Gibbs, David Montgomery, Jameson Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, um, uh, uh, Amari Cooper. The star-studded game in Detroit, in Ford Field. But I think what actually helps Buffalo in this scenario is the fact that they lost last week against the Rams. I think that that gives them more urgency, especially knowing what happens with Kansas City and Cleveland earlier in the day in the 1 o'clock window. The win against the Chiefs does give them a huge advantage because now, they essentially do need Kansas City to lose twice. And as I mentioned a couple weeks ago, Kansas City that doesn't cover against anybody. Buffalo's going to keep playing their guys. They're going to keep firing away. And they know that if they lose this game to Detroit and Pittsburgh were to, beat Philadelphia, all of a sudden Buffalo goes down to the 3 seed. So this game still does matter for the Bills. We know it matters for the Lions in terms of them trying to keep the number 1 seed, not only away from Philadelphia, but away from Minnesota, and then dropping them down to the 5 seed. We know Dan Campbell's aggressiveness here as a head coach. I think this is a run the ball, control the game type of game where you don't want the other offense on the field. I could see this being a big David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs game for Detroit out of the backfield. In the end, this is a game I'm not going to bet. I just want to watch it. I think Josh Allen gets the ball last. I think he makes one more bigger play than Jared Goff. Bills go on the road, knock off Detroit. Pittsburgh at Philly. Listen, the drama surrounding my Philadelphia Eagles this week when it comes to A.J. Brown, Jalen Hurts, Brandon Graham on the radio, we're going to know if it's a big story after this game or not. Yes, Jalen Hurts played horrific against Carolina. I was the first one to admit it on Tuesday when we recorded this podcast. 108 yards. He wasn't good. There's questions about A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts' friendship. As I said on Tuesday's show, just put it to bed with a good performance here against Pittsburgh, where one of two things is going to happen in this game. Either A, Pittsburgh's going to win in Philadelphia for the first time in forever because they've always struggled in Philadelphia, or B, my Eagles are going to finally defeat Russell Wilson for the first time in his career. I think this is going to be an A.J. Brown game. He changed his picture to the Joker on Instagram. I think A.J. Brown, Jalen Hurts, I think they make it a focal point to get him involved in the passing game. Saquon Barkley turns it on in the second half. This Eagles defense that has struggled last week, maybe their worst game in 2 months against the Carolina Panthers. I think that pass rush gets after, their former teammate Isaac Seumalo there in Pittsburgh. No George Pickens, I think, is a big deal in this game for Pittsburgh. I was shocked by that. I thought, they were just owning him out against Cleveland to save him for this game. The injury is more legitimate than I thought. I like Philly. Green Bay at Seattle. Boy, is this a toss-up. Seattle, as I keep mentioning, after starting 4-5, they are now 8-5. Mike McDonald's got that team playing really good football, but Seattle has struggled at home this year. Jordan Love is coming in on a heater, and this game is so important for both teams. For Seattle, it's keeping pace with the winner of that Rams Niners game and potentially Arizona if they, as I project, beat New England to stay in front of that NFC West lead. For Green Bay, it's if we lose, we don't want to drop down to the 7th seed and maybe Washington passes us in the NFC standings. So it's a huge game. I think this is a realistic rematch here going into NFC wildcard weekend where Green Bay would be right back here in Seattle, a 6 versus 3 matchup. It's so tough. Again, I don't want to doubt Seattle. I said last week I'm done doubting Seattle. I think they're a very good football team. In the end, I think Jordan Love, who's been on a heater, makes one more big play. Green Bay, again, coming off 10 days of rest from that Lions game on Thursday night, I think it's a factor as well. Green Bay wins this one. Chicago and Minnesota. Now, the last time these two teams played a couple weeks ago, back in what was it, week 12, the Bears were 4.5 point dogs. Now they're 7 point dogs. I do think they'll play better. This is a Monday night game, first of two Monday night games. Falcons Raiders in another Monday night game, and they did not flex that to my absolute shock. They could have flexed Pittsburgh and Philly. They could have even flexed Bucks Chargers. Um, I would have been okay, even if they flexed it like Dolphins Texans into this spot, as opposed to Falcons Raiders or even Colts Broncos. Um, Very weird decision by the NFL. Monday night, I like the Vikings to win. I think Caleb Williams will have a better game. I think they'll be able to score some points against the Vikings defense they just played a couple weeks ago. In the end, I think Sam Darnold continues the year he's been on. Maybe not 5 touchdown passes or so. A couple weeks ago when these two teams played, Justin Jefferson did not get involved. I expect him to have a bigger game. And then if Atlanta doesn't beat Vegas, Kirk Cousins will not be the starting quarterback for Atlanta in week 16. You heard it here. We talk about the 2023 Philadelphia Eagles collapse. If Atlanta starts off the year 6-3, there's real Jacksonville Jaguar, 2023-ish as well, collapse here where they don't win another game. And so I like Atlanta to win. Vegas plays real tough under Antonio Pierce. They took Tampa Bay. That was a close game until the fourth quarter. I think at home, I don't trust Kirk Cousins at this point, ironically, to cover that spread. And as I said on Tuesday, Atlanta may be the only team this year that I bet on their over-under to not hit. Their over-under was 9.5. At 6-3, I felt really good about it. All they had to do was go 4-4 the rest of the way. Well, now they got to go 4-0. Can they do it? It's possible. They got a pretty easy schedule, but I doubt it occurs with the way they're playing football right now. So to recap, I like the Rams over San Francisco. I like Kansas City over Cleveland, Cincinnati over Tennessee, Baltimore over the Giants, Washington over New Orleans, Carolina over Dallas, Houston over Miami, Jacksonville over the Jets, LA Chargers over Tampa, Denver over Indianapolis, Arizona over New England, Buffalo over Detroit, Philly over Pittsburgh, Green Bay over Seattle, Minnesota over Chicago, and then Atlanta over Vegas. My 5 best bets for week 15 of the 2024 NFL season are: I like Cincinnati -4.5 against Tennessee. I'm going to close my eyes and weigh the 14.5 with Baltimore over the Giants. I like Carolina. First time they're favored in 33 weeks to go and defeat the Cowboys. To me, again, it says more about Dallas than it does about Carolina. I like Houston to cover the 2.5 against Miami, and they will wrap up the AFC South because I do like Denver to cover at home 3.5 against Indianapolis. Yes, I like all favorites this week. Like that clip from the Brands World podcast? If so, make sure you go down there and hit that subscribe button. While you're down there hitting the subscribe button, make sure to also hit the notification bell so you never miss another upload. And make sure you check out all the other clips from the Brands World podcast right here on YouTube.